On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, how to get paid by the Bankruptcy Trustee.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Sean Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and I'm also here with George. Welcome back, George.
Hey, how you doing, guys? Your financial coach here, and apparently I don't know how to work a microphone, so go figure.
You're doing sound checks before the show started recording, and I'm like, why is your mic level so low, George? Well, because we need to turn the thing on. So we got a couple of great topics for you this week, a couple of testimonials, a listener question to get to. Before we get there real quick, I do want to talk about Mark Purvis, our editor and one of our two show sponsors. Mark has a website called LegacySpotlight.com. And so one of the things that appeals to me about LegacySpotlight.com is it captures, or it helps you to work with Mark to capture the stories of your family, stories for your family, either stories from older generations that you want to preserve for yourself and your kids, or stories that you want to tell for yourself and your kids. And so what would it be like to go back and talk to grandma and grandpa, or listen to grandma and grandpa and talk about the history of your family? Well, Mark can help you with that through LegacySpotlight.com. We also want to give him a lot of love because he is the editor. He's been with us since the very beginning, editing our shows. So again, if you're a working professional and you've got retired parents and you want to record their life stories, contact Mark Purvis at LegacySpotlight.com, and he can help you put those videos together and make it fun. So in this week's episode, well, let me start with, how's it going, George?
I've got to say, moving is terrible, okay? All right, so I'm in the middle of a move itself, and the one thing I do kind of realize is that, unfortunately, I'm getting old. And lifting, and even if I hired folks to kind of, I had to be involved in helping with that, and my goodness, that was not a great experience. So the one thing I got to say related to money, though, it's a nice peace of mind to kind of have everything in place, had my budget in place, did what I needed to do to make sure this move happened. Good thing is everything is kind of working. Nothing is in place in the house, though. Where everything's all over the place and still in boxes. So my wife, is very annoyed on that, and she's like, "Let's go." But, and so we're getting there. But I gotta say, moving, please. I think I'm never going to move again. I'm just telling you right now. I think I'm going to die in this house because I'm done with it. It's just too much work.
That's me. My attitude and your wife's attitude are the same. I mean, getting into the house is great. I've got an idea there, but once I get into the house, I'm like, I need it to be set up. Even when we moved here into the office, I spent the rest of that day and the weekend putting the stuff on the walls and putting the books on the bookshelf and all that stuff. And when we moved into our house, I spent that first weekend, again, putting stuff where it needs to go, setting up the shelves, setting up the furniture, setting up the bookcases, putting everything in. I hate having all those boxes laying around. But the one thing that I would say, too, I don't like moving either. Getting older like you, hiring people that need to do the move. But for me, it's the cost of the move itself. And one of the things that occurred to me when we moved into this office here, we kind of got suckered by the movers. So you really got to be careful about what mover you choose. And when you do choose your mover, budget a little bit extra. I mean,
always.
We had that scenario where the mover said it would be, whatever it was, $500 or whatever it was to move from West Chase, from where the office was, out here to Clearwater, countryside area where the office is now. And I think they gave me like a $500 or $600 quote, and the final moving bill ended up being like $800. And part of it was because they didn't send enough people, so the move took longer. And because it took longer, they were charging by the hour.
Of course.
And that kind of pissed me off because you gave me a quote of X, and then you didn't send me enough movers to fulfill your quote. But when they're standing there with your stuff on the truck, You
Didn't much choice.
yeah.
I think I could one up you. When I moved from Pennsylvania down to Florida,
it's not really a competition.
well, I'm going to try. So that's a huge move itself. So we got quoted probably like $7,000 to come down from, and it's a big move. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Put it on a tractor trailer, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. They get down here itself. First of all, they couldn't even make it through the driveway itself. So that was one added cost. Then they realized, that we have more weight. That move itself ended up from $7,000 to about $11,000 itself. So hundreds, I'll take the hundreds part.
Yeah.
No, and then on top of that, I had to rent a U-Haul myself and move it out of their truck into the U-Haul so I can get it into the place.
Wow.
Please do your do.
That was the other thing.
That's a lot of research there you got to do.
When we moved out here out here to the countryside area, that was the other thing, is that they didn't bring a truck that was big enough.
Yeah.
So now I'm having to call friends and family and employees and whatnot who have pickup trucks.
Yeah, exactly.
To come out and get all the garbage that they couldn't fit. Although that actually does give you a good lesson in downsizing. And do you actually need to hang on to all you have?
Yeah, we started like, honey, I don't think we need this stuff for the garage. I think we're good here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hear you, man. It's, no moving. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, and that's the biggest part of it. My wife wants to move our home as well. And my big objection to moving is not the move. It's more... But when you move, you're going to want a new couch.
Of
When you move, you're going to
course.
want a new dining room table.
Yep.
You're going to want a new
Bedroom set.
A bedroom set. And if we get a pool, and that's another thing, when you're moving offices, you got to make sure to let them know, are you on the first floor, the second floor?
Right.
Is there an elevator? Where's the elevator?
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff could add into cost. So, for those of you moving, definitely do your due diligence. Call me, call George. We'll tell you our horror stories.
And
with
we're
moving.
sorry.
Sorry. So, what else? What else you got going on?
Just recently got done with a money and kids seminar here at one of our local libraries. And I got to say, it was a great experience. 16 kids, 9 10-year-olds. Okay, so my greatest audience itself. And of course, hurting cats is probably, good. But it was a great experience itself. Being able to just teach kids. Again, it's all about foundational knowledge for a lot of these kids itself. So we went into investing. No, I'm kidding. It's not investing itself. There's always one or two, or like, Elon Musk, and, we've got to invest in Tesla. And I'm like, good for you. Let's worry about, getting our first job.
Right.
But it was all about like spending money, saving money, giving money itself, giving the foundation that's needed for these kids. You got to start somewhere to be able to have these conversations with the kids itself. And surprisingly enough, man, they are smart, man. These kids know what they're doing in regards to like, I got to make money to be able to, spend it itself. What surprised me as well was, the generosity that these kids, are going with itself. So it was really nice to see itself. And like I said, the biggest testimonial I got to say that I got from there was like, this guy is nice and he's funny. So I was like, okay, good for me. That was it. We're done. So hoping to talk with the parents now in my next seminar here at the local library too, just to make sure, again, how do we talk with the kids? And again, it's different when we're talking to youngins. It's different when we talk with teenagers and our young adults who are still acting like kids, including myself. So that's kind of the deal that we're doing.
One of the things that occurs to me, there's a lot of stuff that I want to do with the podcast and with the show. One of them was getting a co-host, so check, that's done. But I want to start doing more seminars, more conferences, more webinars, more summits, more that kind of stuff. And so, that's one of the reasons that I like having you here to help me with the show, is that you can provide some of that stuff as well. But what I want to do is put it out to the listeners. So what do you all think? I mean, this podcast, really, I love doing it. I would probably do it even if we had one subscriber, but we have a whole bunch of subscribers. But what do you all want? Do you want to do a webinar with me, with George, with both of us? Do you want to have like a one-day online kind of summit thing where we go into different topics, or maybe have different people come on to talk about different things? What do you all want? How can we leverage this show to add more value for all of you? So go ahead and email me. You've got my email address. Go ahead and email George. You've got his. Both of those will be in the notes if you need them. Mine is Sean@yesnerlaw.com, and we're going to see how good my memory is. George's it's what? George Curbelo?
No, GC Financial Coach 21.
I knew there was the
at
21 in there.
gmail.com.
I knew there was the 21 in there. So again, Sean at yesnerlaw.com or GC Financial Coach 21 at gmail.com. Email the two of us or email either one of us. Let us know what you want to see or hear. Do you want seminars? Do you want webinars? Do you want us to come out and talk to you or to your group, or do it as an online? Or,
Absolutely.
What do you want? How can we help you add more value? So, sort of speaking to that and transitioning from that, we did have a listener question.
We do, my friend. I'm going to go to your wheelhouse, my friend, because apparently he's like talking too much. But let's get the lawyer out of you, my friend. So we had a listener question itself, and there's a few parts, but I'm gonna let you kind of guide us through these kind of questions. But what is the role of a bankruptcy trustee?
I'll give a little bit more background. So thank you, Mechiel, for the question.
There you go.
She was the one that submitted the question to us. Michelle's been a guest on the show, longtime listener. I've been on her show. Great show. I'll put a link in the notes to her show as well if you want to listen to it. But great show. So Mechiel, the question sort of arises out of a situation where we're representing a creditor. The law firm is representing a creditor. So someone who lends money to someone else, and then that person that the money was lent to files bankruptcy. So generally, the role of the bankruptcy trustee is to figure out, does the person who filed bankruptcy have assets? And if they have assets, how do we take those assets, turn them into cash, and get the creditors paid? That's the role of the bankruptcy trustee. How do we make sure that the creditors get paid? Now, there is a little bit of a difference when we talk about a Chapter 7 bankruptcy versus a Chapter 13. A Chapter 7 is a liquidation bankruptcy. A Chapter 13 is a payment plan bankruptcy. And the way the trustee collects and pays assets to creditors is slightly different in both of those cases. But to answer the basic question, the role of the trustee is to make sure that the creditors get paid, and that the trustee explores that the debtor either has the assets to pay, doesn't have the assets to pay, has the income to pay, doesn't have the income to pay. So that's basically the role of the bankruptcy trustee.
Excellent itself. But so they're helping everybody else get paid itself. So I guess the question is, how do they get paid?
And that's one of the differences between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13. So with a Chapter 7, again, that's a liquidation. So literally the trustee is taking assets that are not exempt, turning those assets into cash, and then paying the creditors. So what do I mean by that? Let's take a car, for example. Let's say that right now we talked about the car exemption on the last episode and how it wasn't raised, how it might be raised soon. But let's say that someone has a car worth $3,000. So we got the $1,000 car exemption. There's $2,000 of non-exempt equity in that car. $3,000 value minus $1,000 exemption. The trustee's literally going to say, if you want to keep your car, give me $2,000. Now, whether that $2,000 is paid in a lump sum, whether it's paid over time, with cars, the trustees don't like taking payments over time, and if they do, it's a very short 2 months, 3 months, very short window. But let's say that somebody then gives the trustee the $2,000. That's the $2,000 that the trustee uses to then will say to the creditors, hey, I've recovered cash. Submit your claim, creditors. Tell me how much you're owed, and I'll pay you a percentage of that cash. If the debtor says, I don't have $2,000. If I had $2,000 to give you, I wouldn't be in bankruptcy.
Right, exactly.
I don't have $2,000 to give you. At that point, in this example, the trustee would literally take the car, auction the car, turn that cash, and then, again, go out to the creditors. I've got some cash, make your claims, and then pay out pro rata. Now, there's a couple other solutions we have there with cars. There are companies that will give you a loan based on the equity in your car, even though you're in a bankruptcy. So there, and again, we can negotiate with the trustee, we can settle with the trustee. So there's always those kinds of options. The way the trustee gets paid in a Chapter 7 case is the value of the assets that they turn into cash and pay. So initially the trustee will get some portion of the filing fee. For a Chapter 7, the filing fee is $338. The trustee gets some portion of that for every case that they do. And then in my example, if they then take a car and turn it into $2,000 worth of cash to the bankruptcy estate, they'll get a piece of that. So that's how the trustee gets paid. What assets can we turn into cash, and then they get a percentage before they pay out to the creditors. With a Chapter 13, with a payment plan bankruptcy, that's different and a little bit easier to conceptualize. A Chapter 13, the debtor has disposable income. They're making payments every month to the trustee to pay off their creditors at some percentage. So the trustee gets paid based on how much money flows through the trustee's bank account. So if it's a $500 a month payment, the trustee gets some percentage of that every month, the Chapter 13 trustee. Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 trustees are different. We've got 213 trustees here in Tampa Bay. We've got, 10, 11, 12, something like that, Chapter 7 trustees. Mm-hmm. So, different trustees, and they're all assigned at random. So we really never know when we push the button and file the case which trustee we're going to get. Some of them are more strict. Some of them are less strict. Some of them are more friendly. Some of them are less friendly. But they all do, in my mind, they all do a great job. If any of them are listening, you all do a great job. But yeah, that's how they get paid. So the trick with a Chapter 7 is if we can protect all of the assets and the debtor has sufficient income or insufficient income and qualifies for a Chapter 7 case, then all the trustee gets is that portion of the fee.
Right.
To Michelle's question, yeah, the Chapter 7 trustee is going to get paid because we've got a couple of non-investment properties in this Chapter 7 case that Mechiel is asking about. And so the trustee is going to get paid based on the sale of that property. And so the trustee is incentivized to sell the properties, turn the properties into cash, and then that way they'll make more money.
Wow. I mean, it's one of those kind of things. I mean, how complex it is, but I guess the only other question I would say then, how do they value or balance the assets itself? I mean, that was, you kind of mentioned it a few times, but let's give the listeners the 411 there.
So initially, when I go through a bankruptcy petition with somebody, I'm going to ask them, how much do you think your car is worth? How much do you think your house is worth? How much do you think... We kind of get into some trouble when we talk about businesses.
Right.
The interesting issue with a business is, like, for example, Yesner Law, if I decide not to practice law, Yesner Law basically dissolves. Mm-hmm. So what is the value of the law firm if I ever got into a space where I had to file bankruptcy and decided to shut down the law firm, what's it really worth? And so a lot of people want to say my business is worth zero. Problem is, it's got desks. It's got the computers. The law firm owns the podcast. It's got, shelves and books and client lists and all this other stuff that does provide some value. Now, maybe that value is $500. Maybe it's $5,000. Maybe it's $50,000. Who knows? But
Sean, we value you, please. Come on here.
Not me. It's the law firm. So typically with cars, you're looking at what are the Kelley Blue Book, Edmunds, you're looking at those kinds of things. With houses, you're looking at the property appraiser, you're looking at Zillow, you're looking at that kind of stuff. We can get even more complex when you talk about jewelry, maybe taking it to an appraiser to get it appraised. So I don't know that this is officially printed anywhere, but a lot of times what I like to do is say, what do you got in your house? You got couches and love seats and coffee tables and end tables and blah, 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 blah. And I try to give it a value somewhere around $1,000 for every 1,000 square feet of space. So if your house is 2,000 square feet of space, you got between $1,800 and $2,500 worth of stuff in it, is my guess. Now, I'm also going to want to know what is it, because if it's a 20-year-old couch, it's not going to be worth as much as if it's a 2-year-old couch.
Right.
And so we also got to kind of take that stuff into account. But that's the way that the trustee values it. Now, what I like to do in my petitions with my clients is get it close enough that the trustee is probably going to agree with the value. But in every case, the trustee has the authority to send an appraiser to your house to value your stuff. So if the trustee believes that the values I've put are not accurate, or the values that the debtor has given me that we've discussed are not accurate, the trustee has the authority to literally send an appraiser to your house to value your stuff. It doesn't happen very often in my cases, in my experience. I've had it happen a few times.
Sure.
Doesn't happen very often. So that's why we try to get these values as accurate as possible. We could call in a business broker to value a company. We could call in a real estate appraiser to appraise a property. We could call in a jewelry appraiser to appraise jewelry. We can do all that kind of stuff. And there have been some times where I'm like, look, I think we're really close to the line here. Let's spend a couple of $100 now and get a formal appraisal versus having to battle with the trustee.
Take the word
later.
Right. Gotcha.
Let's figure it out now versus having to figure out later. Funny story. So one of the things you mentioned, I was going to say when you were talking about the Money and Kids seminar,
what a segue.
Well, so
no, go ahead, man.
I'll tie it together. I'm going to circle back around.
Oh, here we go.
Watch.
The genius is here.
Watch how I do this. I used to collect football cards growing up. My most valuable card is I've got a Joe Montana rookie in mint condition.
What? Let's go.
Yeah, Joe Montana mint condition rookie. And I should probably now put that in a safe or something.
Yeah.
But I've got,
and of course the young kids are like, who?
Yeah, who? I got Marino's rookie card signed.
Nice.
Interesting story though. So Marino, my dad is a CPA. Used to work down in Miami. Was one of the CPAs for the Dolphins. And so Marino was one of his clients for some period of time for some issue. And so my dad said to me, hey, Marino's coming into the office today. Do you have anything you want him to sign? And I'm like, yeah, here's a whole boatload of stuff. Now, my dad, not wanting to bother Dan Marino,
of course,
gave him one rookie card that I'd given my dad. And Marino signed the rookie card. And so to me,
wow,
it's invaluable.
Oh, no.
The funny thing is Marino used a ballpoint pen to sign the card. That dents the card.
Oh, yeah.
So technically, the card is no longer in mint condition because it's dented by the ballpoint pen. But that card's invaluable to me. So I've got all kinds of other Dolphins that signed cards. I've got all kinds of other football stuff in my house.
Right. Awesome.
I used to collect and put these sets together. And so what I tried to do with my older son is say, hey, let's go through a lot of the cards that I have that, like, for example, I've put all my cards together. Like, I've got a whole box of football players that used to play at Notre Dame. I've got a whole box of football players that used to play at Florida and Miami and Tennessee and Alabama and, whatever, all the major schools. And so I said to my son, let's go on to eBay. Let's list all these cards.
Right.
And if you help me with it, I'll give you a percentage of the profits. That never really caught on. He never really did it. Now, maybe I need to wait for him to get older. Maybe I need to approach the younger one, whatever. But what he did get into was Pokemon.
Of course.
Pokemon cards. I've actually got a Pokemon set just because I wanted to play Pokemon with my kids. So I went out to Target and bought a simple set.
Sure,
yeah,
right. It's okay.
But what he learned is that he could take his Pokemon cards to some of the local card shops, and they'll give him either money or credit towards other Pokemon cards.
Correct, yep.
When he learned that was a really good segue for him to teach him about investing.
Investing, right.
And trying to spot, why is this card good? Why is this card rising in value? Why is this card lowering in value? How rare is this card?
Right.
How common is that card? And even to the point that he'll look at a card now and say, yeah, it's a fake.
Oh, nice. He's like that.
There is a whole... I didn't realize how many Pokemon cards are fake.
Oh. Well, I mean, you obviously the Jake Paul kind of story where he bought the $2 million, fake card or something like that. That was big news a few months ago as well. But yeah, but he can spot them.
He can spot them now. Wow. And it's the texture of the card and the way the color, and it's weird.
Okay,
when you really dig into it, it's weird. But that occurred to me as a great way to teach kids about investing is to, he didn't get into football cards, but he got into Pokemon cards.
Right.
Now he's starting to emerge from that phase as well. Yeah. So now I've got a boatload of freaking Pokemon cards at my house.
Well,
but
you can start investing then.
I'll start investing in Pokemon cards. But so here's how I circle this back.
Here we go, guys. Wait for it.
I had a Chapter 7 client once who had a baseball card collection.
Yeah, best.
And you have to list any collections as part of the bankruptcy petition. So do you have any Yadros, any figurines, any paintings, any of this, any of that? And those are all the kinds of questions you ask in a bankruptcy due diligence phase. But he had a baseball card collection. And so we listed it on the petition. And I do a lot of football card collecting, not a bunch of baseball card collecting, but I know about collecting cards in general.
Sure.
So are they mint? Are they not mint?
Right.
Rookie cards, famous players, years, all that kind of stuff. And so we went through, and I didn't really go into detail, but I did a little bit of due diligence and put a value for the baseball card collection on the petition. Trustee calls me up after the meeting of creditors and says, "Hey, I want to do an examination. I want to have my appraiser do an examination of that baseball card collection."
Right.
Okay, fine. I mean, you're entitled to it, trustee. Fine. So I call the client. Look, trustee wants to see the baseball cards. Bring them into my office. I'll hold them here. The appraiser can come here, and we'll schedule it, and he'll take a look.
Take it, right.
Client drops off these, I think it was 2 or 3 of those big 3-ring binder, like 5-inch 3-ring binders of cards. Now, the first thing that occurred to me, they're not in a specific card binder.
Okay, it's just like a trapper keeper.
Right. And so the problem there is the metal hoop
Right.
dents the top and bottom pages of cards. So that was the first thing I noticed. I'm flipping through the book, and I don't see any named players. I don't see any, big time rookies. I don't see anything really in my mind that stands out as valuable.
Sure. Okay.
So the appraiser comes in about a week later, and I take the cards and I put them in the conference room, and I say to the appraiser, I said, "Look, these are not in card binders, so you're going to have a couple that are dented. I looked through it. Obviously here you are. You can look through it as well. I don't see any rookies. I don't see any big names. I don't see anything. But here it is. Go for it." And the appraiser looks at me. "I'll be the judge of that."
Yes.
Whatever, dude.
I'm the expert. Let's go.
Here it is. I got stuff to do.
Yeah.
So I leave to go to my office. I leave the appraiser in the conference room. About 20 minutes later, the appraiser comes walking into my office. He's like, "Yeah, I'm done." I'm like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Some of the cards are dented because of the rings.
Right.
I don't see any rookies. I don't see any big..."
Well, thank you.
Thanks, dude. So you're saying I could be a baseball card appraiser? So
Next chapter of your career, buddy.
there you go. So it ended up being a good result for the client because actually I think the appraiser determined that the value we put on the cards was more than what the cards were actually worth and the collection was actually worth. And so everything in that particular case, everything that we had listed was able to be exempted, able to be protected. So this ended up being a Chapter 7 case where the client didn't owe any money. But again, the trustee wants to look at the card collection.
Let him look at it.
Show the trustee the card collection. And if you want to start selling baseball cards and football cards and whatnot, you go for it. If you can, if I file bankruptcy and my bankruptcy trustee listens to this episode, you better believe first thing they're going to ask is, "Where's that Montana rookie card?"
Exactly. I love it though.
I got Elway's rookie card.
Nice.
I got again and a bunch of that.
I had a few rookie cards itself. Mark McGuire, your Cal Ripken, back in the day itself. The question for me though is, where are they? I just moved. I'll let you know where I find those cards itself. But yeah, I was a huge baseball, card collector back in the day itself. The Ken Griffey Jr. cards and all that kind of stuff. But
this used to be in the days you could go to the card shows and you'd buy they sell right now. They sell like in Target the box with whatever 50 individually wrapped packages in there, and so you'd buy the whole box and you'd take it home and you'd unwrap.
Yeah, those were the best.
Eat like 1,000 pieces of gum. As
that hard
cards.
Gum.
Try to put the sets together, and you'd collect all the doubles, and then you go back to the card show the next month, and you'd be like, "I've got these doubles, and I need cards number 110 and 216 and 372 and trade for them." And it was awesome. They don't do that as much anymore.
Dude, they have it like a digital. On your phone you can do that. I'm like, how is that the same though? It's not the same, but
be weird putting your phone in your bicycle spokes and letting it.
Well, we got people who do that though.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, my man. All right. Well, as you could tell, somebody's passionate about his football card collection, people.
love
So
my
let's
football cards.
let's give him some feedback and some love on that.
Well, and again, growing up in Miami, we didn't have baseball or
That's true.
basketball at the time. So the
Well,
only
technically,
thing-
you still don't. I don't think people actually go to the games and stuff, except when they go to the the playoffs.
although I will tell you,
Rays.
I'm a Bucks fan. I'm a Rays fan. I won't root for the Marlins. I'm a Rays fan. I'm a Bucks fan. I'm a Lightning fan. The only one that I can't totally give up still are the Dolphins.
No, Dolphins. Unfortunately, I'm from New York, my friend. So I'm a Mets fan and a Jets. Well, I can't even say it out loud. I'm a Jets fan. Ugh. So yeah, that's we can't do much about that.
That's
but
good. If there's any team worse than the Dolphins,
it's the Jets.
It's the Jets.
Oh, no doubt. Let's go anyway.
We both have to have dealt with the Patriots over the last 4 decades or whatever it is.
Hey, let's get back to money.
Let's talk about money. So I actually think we are kind of getting towards the end of this episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically the role of the bankruptcy trustee, is to marshal the assets of the debtor if the debtor has assets,
Right.
pay the creditors. If it's a payment plan bankruptcy, monitor the money in, pay out the creditors the money. They get paid differently based on whether it's a 7 or a 13, and valuation issues come up in bankruptcy all the time. So, yeah, thank you, Mechiel, for those questions.
Thank you, for sure.
And again, if you're listening, if you've got questions, shoot me an email, shoot George an email. We're happy to answer your questions on the show. And again, let us know. I really want to leverage the podcast for all of you in terms of classes and courses and webinars
Topics
and
and
seminars
anything,
and
man.
topics. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Let us know how we can add that value for you. And I haven't really talked to George about it, and I'm not going to put him on the spot, but I would envision both paid and free, whether it's webinars, seminars, whatever.
Yep.
I would envision both. I would envision some level of free content that we're going to continue
Absolutely.
to provide in addition to the podcast, and eventually down the road, I'd envision some kind of paid content that we would provide. I don't know. As we get towards the end, anything else, George?
No, I would say thank you as usual for having me and continuing to kind of allow me to be in your presence, because my goodness, I have to still say my wife is still a big fan of this guy. This guy is like so smart and he's so intelligent. I'm like, okay, now I'm a little jealous, but hey, keep up doing what you're doing, my friend. And thank you for the lesson today. But it's a pleasure doing this with you, my friend, and we'll keep doing for everyone else. Hey, financial coaching. If you ask that question, it's really more of how can I help you get your financial situation in a better place for you, whether you're in crisis or not. It's really more of just how can I help you get more out of your money each month itself. So that I'm here to help. Again, send an email, go to the website, and we can start the conversation from there. And just like I said, I'm just here to help you guys and just go from there.
Yeah, and I think that gets us to a good spot. I do want to mention real quick our long-time running sponsor, Sam Cohen with Attorneys First Insurance. Sam writes errors and omissions insurance, malpractice coverage, basically, for attorneys and title companies all over the country. I know that he's focused on Florida, which is where he lives here in the Tampa Bay area. I know he's also focused on Texas, but he can write malpractice insurance anywhere. A great way to support the show would be to support Sam. A great way to support Sam would be to introduce him to an attorney or a title company that's just starting up that may need malpractice insurance. One of the other things Sam told me he can do is write coverage even in a situation where there's been a previous claim. So if you know an existing attorney or title company that wants to get a quote on renewing its malpractice coverage, again, that would be a great referral for Sam. You can reach him at attorneysfirst.com or sam@attorneysfirst.com. Thanks again, Sam, for all of your help and support of the show over these last, however long I've been doing this number of years, 320 some odd, getting close to 330 episodes.
Woohoo!
So with that, we will let you all go for the week. We look forward to talking to you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, and I got to get back to saying the line.
Yeah, man, come on.
We hope that at the end of the month you have more money rather than at the end of the money you have more month, and we will talk to you all next week.
Thank you.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Sean or connect with us on social media. Sean Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.